Woman is humiliated in luxury store, but what they didn't know was what her husband did. Emily Parker took a deep breath before pushing the glass door of the most expensive boutique in New York City. Her nerves were on edge, but she had saved every penny for 6 months for this special moment. The saleswoman Jennifer looked up from the fashion magazine she was flipping through, and her face immediately twisted into an expression of disdain. Emily's beige suit, though well kept, was clearly not designer. Her simple hat and the purse she clutched tightly betrayed her humble origins. "Can I help you?" asked Jennifer in a frosty tone that made it clear Emily wasn't welcome there. "Good afternoon. I'm looking for a special gift for my husband. Maybe a silk tie or—" Emily began hesitantly. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right place?" Jennifer interrupted, speaking loudly enough for other customers to hear. "Our ties cost over $2,000. Perhaps you'd prefer to look at the stores downtown." Emily felt her face grow hot, but kept her composure. She had worked as a maid for decades to support the household, while her husband Richard dedicated himself to his work. Every dollar saved had been earned through sweat. "I understand the prices. I came prepared," Emily replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Jennifer laughed scornfully and caught the attention of the manager, Victoria Thompson, an elegant woman in her 40s who approached with firm steps and an even sterner expression. "What's the issue here?" Victoria asked, looking Emily up and down as if she were something unpleasant. "This lady insists on seeing our most expensive pieces," Jennifer explained with a malicious smile. Victoria sighed dramatically. "Ma'am, I'll be blunt with you. This establishment caters to a very specific clientele, people who value quality and exclusivity. It's not the kind of place where people like you usually shop." The words felt like a slap to Emily's face. She looked around and noticed other customers had stopped shopping to watch the scene. Some women whispered among themselves, while others discreetly filmed with their phones. "I just need 5 minutes to pick something," Emily pleaded, feeling tears welling in her eyes. "It's for our wedding anniversary. My husband works so hard and never asks for anything for himself." "Listen carefully," Victoria said, raising her voice even louder. "I don't want you touching anything here. These pieces are imported from Italy and France. Someone like you could damage fabrics that cost more than your house." The silence in the store was suffocating. Emily felt every eye on her, some pitying, others cruelly amused. A wealthy customer laughed openly and remarked to her friend, "This is why I hate when just anyone is allowed in these places." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Victoria signaled to the store security, a large man who approached with an intimidating expression. "Please escort this lady to the exit," she ordered coldly. "No, please," Emily tried again, her voice trembling. "I have the money. Look." She opened her purse and showed an envelope with carefully saved bills. "I saved for months working as a house cleaner. My husband deserves something nice." "Sweaty money isn't welcome here," Victoria declared cruelly. "Now leave before I call the police for disturbance." The security guard gently took Emily's arm, and she didn't resist. Tears finally streamed down her face as she walked toward the door. On her way out, Victoria shouted for everyone to hear, "And don't come back. This store isn't for your social class." Outside, Emily leaned against the marble wall of the mall, trying to hold back her tears. 42 years of marriage, a lifetime of hard work and dedication, and she couldn't even buy a decent gift for the man she loved. "Are you all right, ma'am?" a gentle voice asked. Emily looked up and saw a distinguished man in his 60s, dressed in an impeccable suit. His eyes showed genuine concern. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause a scene." Emily quickly wiped her tears away. "My name is Dr. Michael Williams. I have an office here in the mall and I saw what happened. That was completely unacceptable," he said, offering her a clean handkerchief. "May I invite you for a coffee? You look like you could use a moment to collect yourself." Emily hesitated, but the kindness of this stranger touched her deeply. They walked to an elegant cafe a few stores down, where Dr. Michael ordered 2 coffees and insisted she eat something. "Tell me about your husband," he said gently. "He must be someone very special to deserve such affection from you." Emily smiled for the first time that terrible day. Richard is the kindest man in the world. We've been married for 42 years. He's always worked so hard ever since he was young. He started as a mail clerk at a big company and worked his way up slowly. Now he's the maintenance manager for the tallest commercial building in New York City. And you? Dr. Michael asked. I've worked as a housekeeper for the same family for 20 years. Mrs. Wilson treats me like family. She was the one who encouraged me to buy something special for Richard. She said I deserved to feel important at least once, Emily sighed. I guess I just don't belong in these fancy places. Dr. Michael shook his head indignantly. You're mistaken. The problem isn't with you. It's with people who've lost their humanity in exchange for social status. As they talked, Emily didn't notice Dr. Michael making a few discreet calls. He asked about Richard's work, where exactly he was employed, how long he'd been with the company. Something about this humble woman's story intrigued him deeply. Dr. Michael, thank you so much for your kindness, but I should get home. Richard will be back from work soon. Emily stood up. Before you go, may I ask one thing? Your husband works at the Manhattan Business Tower, doesn't he? Emily paused, surprised. How did you know? It's a building I know well. Richard Parker is highly respected there. I've heard nothing but good things about him. Emily's face lit up with pride. He really is so dedicated. He knows every corner of that building. He's worked there for over 20 years. All the business owners like him. They say he takes care of the place as if it were his own. Dr. Michael smiled mysteriously. I'm sure that's true. You should be very proud of him. That night, Emily returned to the small apartment she had shared with Richard for decades. It was a modest place, but impeccably clean and organized. Richard was already in the kitchen preparing dinner, as he did every night so she could rest after work. How was your day, my love? He asked, kissing her forehead tenderly. Emily tried to smile, but Richard knew every expression on her face after so many years together. He stopped what he was doing and turned fully toward her. What happened? His voice was full of concern. It's nothing important, Emily tried to brush it off. Emily Rose Parker, in 42 years of marriage, you've never lied to me. Don't start now, Richard said with affection but firmness. You went to that store, didn't you? Emily couldn't hold back her tears any longer. Between sobs, she recounted everything that had happened at the boutique. Every cruel word, every look of disdain, the public humiliation. Richard listened in silence, but Emily could see the pain growing in his eyes. I just wanted to buy something nice for you, she cried. After all you work for, all you do for me, for us, and I can't even manage that. Richard pulled his wife into a tight embrace. At 64, he was still a strong man, with graying hair and calloused hands from decades of labor. But in that moment, Emily sensed something different in him, a tension she had never noticed before. Listen carefully, my love, he said, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes. You're worth more than all those expensive things put together, but no one has the right to treat you like that. Richard, let it go. People like us don't need those things, Emily tried to console him. It's not about the things, Emily. It's about respect. It's about dignity, Richard said, more serious than she had ever seen him. Some truths need to come to light. Emily didn't fully understand what he meant, but she felt something important was about to happen. Richard stayed awake all night, staring out the window, making difficult decisions he had put off for years. The next morning, as Emily prepared for work, Richard announced he'd be home late. I need to take care of some things at the office, he said, kissing her forehead. Things I should have handled a long time ago. At the boutique, Victoria arrived early to organize a new shipment of imported goods. She was in excellent spirits after the previous day's incident, feeling she had protected her store's reputation from unwanted intruders. Jennifer was also pleased, chatting with the other salesgirls about how well they had handled the situation. That kind of person needs to learn their place, she declared arrogantly. Around 10 in the morning, 3 men in suits entered the store. They were clearly high-ranking executives carrying leather briefcases and wearing expensive watches. Victoria immediately approached them with her best professional smile. Good morning, gentlemen. How may I assist you? "We're looking for the manager, Victoria Thompson," said the tallest one. "That's me. It's a pleasure to meet you. How can I help?" "I'm Dr. Jonathan Miller, attorney representing the interests of the Manhattan Business Group. These are my colleagues, Dr. Robert Wilson and Dr. David Brown." Victoria felt a chill in her stomach. The Manhattan Business Group was one of the largest corporate conglomerates in the country, owners of numerous malls and commercial buildings. "We have some matters to discuss regarding the operation of this establishment," Dr. Miller continued. "Do you have a moment to speak privately?" Of course. "Let's go to my office," Victoria stammered, trying to maintain her composure. In the small office at the back of the store, the lawyers sat while Victoria nervously offered coffee or water. "Ms. Thompson, we've been made aware that yesterday there was an incident involving the mistreatment of a customer," Dr. Wilson began. "Incident? I don't know what you're talking about," Victoria lied. Dr. Brown opened his briefcase and pulled out some papers. "We have detailed reports and even recordings of what happened. A woman named Emily Parker was publicly humiliated in this establishment." The name made Victoria swallow hard. "Sir, I can explain. That woman wasn't our target clientele. She was clearly out of place and that justifies public humiliation," Dr. Miller interrupted firmly. "Miss Thompson, do you know who Emily Parker is?" "Just some housekeeper," Victoria replied dismissively, unaware she was digging her own grave. "Emily Parker is the wife of Richard Parker." "And do you know who Richard Parker is?" Dr. Miller asked. "Robert, the maintenance manager of our building?" Victoria replied, confused. "I don't understand the relevance." Dr. David smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Thompson, allow me to clarify some facts you seem unaware of. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, continuing." The three lawyers exchanged glances before Dr. Jonathan continued. "Richard Parker isn't just a maintenance manager. He's the owner of the Manhattan Business Tower. In fact, he's the founder and majority shareholder of the entire Manhattan Business Group." The color drained from Victoria's face. "That's impossible. He's just an ordinary employee. I know the type." "You know nothing," Dr. Robert said coldly. "Mr. Richard built his empire from scratch, starting as a mail clerk and buying his first building at 30. Today, at 64, he owns 15 commercial properties in New York City, including this mall where your store is located." "But why would he work as—" Victoria was stunned. "Because after building his fortune, Mr. Richard chose to live simply," Dr. David explained. "He oversees his businesses personally, preferring to be involved in daily operations rather than sitting in luxury offices. He's a man who never forgot his humble beginnings." Dr. Jonathan opened another document. "Mr. Richard has kept his business identity a secret for years. Only his closest lawyers and accountants know the truth. He prefers to be judged by his character, not his bank account." "He and Mrs. Emily live modestly by choice," Dr. Robert added. "She continues working as a housekeeper because she loves the family she's served for 20 years, not because she needs the money. They donate most of their fortune to charity, always anonymously." Victoria was in complete shock. "I had no idea. How could I have known?" "Exactly, you didn't know," Dr. David said, "and that reveals your true character. You treated someone with contempt based solely on appearances. If you'd known who she really was, would you have behaved differently?" Victoria couldn't answer. "What does that say about your personal values?" Dr. Jonathan pressed. "Do you only treat well those you deem important? Does respect have to be bought?" Tears began streaming down Victoria's face. The weight of what she'd done crashed down on her shoulders. "Mr. Richard is devastated," Dr. Robert continued, "not because he was disrespected, but because the woman he's loved for 42 years was publicly humiliated, a woman who's never harmed anyone, who's worked honestly her entire life." "What do you want from me?" Victoria asked, her voice breaking. "First, we want you to understand the gravity of what you've done," Dr. David said. "Second, Mr. Richard has some demands." Dr. Jonathan pulled an official document from his briefcase. "As the owner of this mall, Mr. Richard is implementing new customer service policies. All stores must undergo mandatory training on respect and human dignity." You'll be reassigned to a position where you can learn humility, Dr. Robert added. Your employee Jennifer, who participated in the humiliation, will be fired with cause. And if I refuse? Victoria asked, trying to summon her earlier arrogance. Then your store will be evicted immediately, Dr. David replied without hesitation. Mr. Richard has full authority to do so, but he'd rather give you a chance at redemption, because he believes people can change. The lawyers stood to leave, but Dr. Jonathan turned back one last time. Oh, and Mrs. Thompson, tomorrow at 10 in the morning, you'll receive a special visitor. I suggest you prepare yourself properly. After the lawyers left, Victoria locked herself in her office and cried as she hadn't in years. Her entire life of prejudice and superficiality was crumbling before her eyes. Jennifer was called and informed of her dismissal. At first, she protested, threatened to sue the store, shouted about injustice. But when she learned the truth about who Emily Parker really was, she left in silence, carrying a lesson she would never forget. That evening, Richard came home later than usual. Emily was in the kitchen finishing dinner when she heard the key in the door. "How was your day?" she asked, as she always did. Richard held her tighter than usual. "Better than yesterday," he replied simply. "Richard, something strange happened today. Mrs. Wilson told me she got a call from someone asking about me, about my work, my character. She was worried, thought I was being investigated for some reason." Richard smiled mysteriously. "Don't worry about it, my love. It's just people checking references." "References for what?" "You'll find out soon," he said, kissing her forehead. "Just promise me one thing. Tomorrow morning I want you to wear your best clothes and come with me somewhere." "Where?" "It's a surprise," Richard grinned. "Trust me." Emily was curious but trusted her husband completely. They ate dinner, chatting about everyday things, but she noticed Richard seemed different, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The next morning, Emily dressed in her best outfit, the same beige suit she'd worn to the boutique. Richard looked impeccable in a suit she rarely saw him wear, made of fabric that seemed far more expensive than his usual clothes. "Richard, you look different today," Emily remarked as they headed downtown. "I feel different," he admitted. "Sometimes we carry secrets for so long we forget what it's like to be free." Emily didn't fully understand, but walked beside her husband as they made their way through the mall toward the boutique where she'd been humiliated 2 days earlier. "Richard, why are we here?" she asked nervously. "Because you deserve a proper apology," he replied, holding her hand firmly, "and because some lessons need to be taught." As they approached the store, Emily noticed unusual activity. Several well-dressed people were waiting outside, including Dr. Michael, whom she'd met the day before. "Dr. Michael?" Emily was surprised to see him. "Mrs. Emily, what a pleasure to see you again," he said warmly. "And this must be the famous Richard." The two men exchanged greetings, but Emily sensed something familiar in the way they looked at each other, as if they already knew one another. "Dr. Michael, do you know my husband?" "Actually, I do. I've worked in the same building as him for 5 years. Mr. Richard is highly respected by all of us." Emily was confused, but before she could ask more, the boutique doors opened, and Victoria appeared. She was visibly nervous, her hands trembling slightly. "Mrs. Emily," Victoria said hesitantly, would you please come in?" Emily looked at Richard for an explanation, but he only smiled encouragingly. "Go ahead, my love. I'll be right here." Reluctantly, Emily stepped inside. To her shock, all the employees were lined up in a respectful row. The atmosphere was entirely different from 2 days before. Victoria stood before Emily and, to her utter astonishment, knelt on the store floor. "Mrs. Emily, I beg for your forgiveness," Victoria said, tears in her eyes. "What I did was unforgivable. I treated you as if you were less important, as if you were less deserving of respect. I was completely wrong." Emily stood frozen. "Please, stand up. You don't need to do this." "I do," insisted Victoria. "You're a hard-working, honest, dedicated woman. You deserve to be treated with respect from the moment you walked in here. Instead, I was cruel, prejudiced, and completely out of line." One of the younger sales associates, Sarah, approached with a tray holding the finest silk ties in the store. "Mrs. Emily, it would be an honor to help you choose the perfect gift for your husband," Sarah said sincerely. "And as a gesture of goodwill, we won't charge you a thing." Emily was stunned. "I don't understand what's happening." Just then, Dr. Michael entered the boutique accompanied by Richard. "Mrs. Emily, may I explain?" Emily nodded, still confused by the whole situation. "Your husband is a very special man," Dr. Michael began. "5 years ago, when I opened my practice in the Manhattan Business Tower, I was going through a very difficult financial time. My wife had passed away, I had 2 young children to raise alone, and my office bills were overdue." Richard listened in silence, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "One night I was in my office late, trying to figure out how I'd pay the rent when your husband showed up," Dr. Michael continued. "He said he was responsible for building maintenance and had noticed I stayed very late, that I seemed worried." Emily looked at Richard with affection. It was just like him to worry about others. "We talked for a long time that night. I told him about my struggles, and he listened patiently. In the end, he said he might be able to help with the rent, that he knew the owner and could negotiate better terms." Dr. Michael paused, emotional at the memory. "The next month, I received a letter saying my office rent had been paid in full for a year, and that an educational fund had been set up for my children. When I asked who the benefactor was, they only told me it was someone who believed in second chances." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "Richard." "I only found out the truth yesterday," Dr. Michael went on. "When you told me about your husband, some things clicked. I made a few calls and discovered that Richard Parker isn't just a maintenance manager. He's the man who saved my life, and my children's." Victoria listened in silence, her shame growing with every word. "Dr. Michael, please," Richard finally spoke. "That wasn't necessary to share." "It absolutely was," Dr. Michael insisted. "Mrs. Emily should know what an extraordinary man she's married to, and these people," he glanced at Victoria, "need to understand the gravity of what they've done." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Sarah stepped forward again. "Mrs. Emily, there's more you should know about your husband." Emily looked questioningly at the young saleswoman. "My younger sister Amanda is studying medicine at the State University," Sarah said. 3 years ago, she almost had to drop out because our family couldn't afford the expensive books and materials. Then one day, she received a mysterious scholarship that covered everything she needed." Richard lowered his gaze, clearly uneasy. "When we found out the truth about who your husband is, Amanda called me crying. She discovered he was the one who created the scholarship program that saved her. Not just her, dozens of other students in need." Sarah was emotional. "Your husband is helping shape a new generation of doctors." Emily turned to Richard, her eyes shining with pride and admiration. "Why did you never tell me any of this?" "Because it's not about recognition, Emily," he replied softly. "It's about doing what's right. You've always known my character, that's what mattered." Victoria could no longer hold back and began to cry openly. "I judged you by the clothes you wore, by the money you seemed to have. I didn't see the extraordinary people you truly are." "We all make that mistake sometimes," Emily said gently, surprising everyone with her compassion. "What matters is that we learn from our errors." Richard stepped closer to his wife and took her hands. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've kept hidden for years because I didn't want it to change who we are." Emily waited patiently. "When I started as a mail clerk 45 years ago, I promised myself that one day I'd be successful. I worked hard, saved every penny, invested everything I could in small businesses." Richard took a deep breath. "Over time, I managed to buy my first building, then another, and another." Richard: "Today, my love, we own 15 commercial buildings in New York City, including this mall. We have enough resources to live as millionaires for the rest of our lives." He squeezed her hands. "But I chose to keep it a secret because I didn't want it to change our essence, our values." Emily was silent for a long moment, processing the information. You're rich?" "We are rich, Emily," very rich, but more importantly, we're rich in love, in values, in purpose. Richard smiled. The money is just a tool to help others. Is that why you kept working as a maintenance manager? Because there, I can see firsthand how my buildings operate, how I can improve conditions for everyone who works in them. And because honest work has always been part of who I am, Richard explained. Money didn't change that. Dr. Michael approached the couple. Mrs. Emily, your husband secretly donates over 80% of his fortune to social causes. Education, healthcare, affordable housing. He's transformed thousands of lives without them ever knowing who their benefactor was. Emily was in shock, but it was a good shock. Everything made sense now. Richard's secretive phone calls, the mysterious meetings, his insistence on living modestly. And here I was, complaining because we couldn't buy an expensive tie, she said, laughing through her tears. You never complained about anything, Emily, Richard corrected her. You just wanted to give me a nice gift because you love me, and that's worth more than any fortune. Victoria stepped forward hesitantly. Mrs. Emily, Mr. Richard, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'd like to ask for a chance to make things right. I want to learn to be a better person. Emily looked at Richard, who nodded encouragingly. Victoria, everyone deserves a second chance, but forgiveness has to come with real change. I'm willing to do anything, Victoria promised. Then start by helping others instead of judging them, Emily suggested. Use your position here to make a positive difference in someone's life. Richard addressed everyone in the store. I want you all to know that what happened here will serve as an example for every store in this mall. We're implementing a mandatory training program on respect and human dignity. But we don't just want surface-level changes, Emily added. We want changes in people's hearts. Sarah raised her hand timidly. Mrs. Emily, can I ask a question? Of course, dear. How can you be so generous after what happened here? If it were me, I'd be furious. Emily smiled wisely. My daughter, anger only hurts the one who carries it. I prefer to use my energy to build bridges instead of walls. Richard looked at his wife with infinite admiration. After 42 years of marriage, she still managed to surprise him with her kindness. Now, said Emily, turning to Sarah, how about helping me pick out this tie? My husband deserves something special. Sarah smiled brightly and began showing the most beautiful options in the store. Emily chose a navy blue silk tie with subtle gold details, perfect for Richard's elegant yet simple taste. How much is it? Emily asked. Mrs. Emily, it would be our honor to gift it to you, said Victoria. No, Emily was firm. I prefer to pay. That way, the purchase will have the sentimental value I've always wanted. She took the envelope from her purse and paid the full price of the tie. It was exactly what she had saved for months, and now she could finally fulfill her dream. When they left the store, Dr. Michael accompanied them to the mall's food court. May I treat you to lunch? There's something more I'd like to share with you. During lunch, Dr. Michael shared how Richard had impacted his life and his children's. My boys graduated in engineering and business last year. Today, they work for a construction company that, as I found out yesterday, is also part of your group. Michael, stop that, Richard said, clearly embarrassed. You're exaggerating my importance. I'm not exaggerating at all, Dr. Michael insisted. Mrs. Emily, your husband has changed the course of hundreds of lives, and he's done all this while maintaining the humility and simplicity you both showed today. Emily took Richard's hand on the table. I always knew you were special. Now I understand why you sometimes worried, why you had so many responsibilities you couldn't explain. You never pressured me for explanations, Richard said. You always trusted me. That gave me the freedom to do what I thought was right. And now, Emily asked, what will change between us? Nothing, Richard answered without hesitation. We're the same people we've always been. Only now you know why I insisted on living modestly. Dr. Michael smiled. You two are a rare example in today's world. People who haven't let success go to their heads, who use their resources for the common good. After lunch, Richard suggested they visit some of the social projects he had secretly funded. Emily was moved to see renovated schools, well-equipped clinics, and affordable housing built with her husband's resources. Richard, why did you keep all this from me? Emily asked as they visited a daycare center for underprivileged children. Because I wanted to be sure I was doing it for the right reasons, he explained. If you knew, it might influence my decisions. I wanted them to come from my heart, not from the expectation of approval. And now that I know? Now we can make these decisions together, Richard smiled, like we always have with everything in our lives. That night at home, Emily was looking at the tie she had bought for Richard. It was beautiful, but now it seemed small compared to the magnitude of what she had discovered about her husband. Regretting the purchase? Richard asked, noticing her expression. No, Emily smiled. I'm thinking maybe we can do more. Maybe we can help that Victoria truly change, and Sarah, and so many others. Richard hugged her. That's why I've loved you for 42 years. Your first instinct is always to help others. Richard, can I ask you something? Anything. I want to know about all the projects. I want to be part of the decisions about how we use our resources, Emily said seriously. If we're a family, then we're a team in everything. Nothing would make me happier, Richard agreed. In the following days, the story of what had happened at the boutique spread quickly through the mall, not for the sensational reasons that usually circulate, but as an example of how people can change when confronted with their own shortcomings. Victoria underwent a genuine transformation. She sought out Emily again a few days later, not to apologize once more, but to propose something concrete. Mrs. Emily, I'd like to create a special service program for people of all social classes, Victoria proposed. I want this store to be an example of inclusion and respect. That's wonderful, Victoria. How can I help? Actually, I was thinking, would you like to work with us? Your life experience, your wisdom would be invaluable in training our team. Emily was surprised. Work at a luxury boutique? Me? Not just any boutique. A boutique that wants to be different, that wants to value people for who they are, not what they have, Victoria explained. You'd be perfect for helping others who might feel intimidated by places like this. Emily looked at Richard, who smiled encouragingly. If this is what you want, my love, you have my full support. And so Emily began a new chapter in her life. 3 times a week, she worked at the boutique as a consultant for compassionate service. Her presence completely transformed the atmosphere of the place. Wealthy clients who had once treated staff dismissively began to rethink their attitudes after meeting Emily and hearing her story. People with fewer means, who had once felt intimidated, found in her a welcoming figure who made them feel valued. Sarah grew very close to Emily, seeing her as a motherly figure. Her sister Amanda, the medical student, also became a regular at the store, not to shop, but to talk with Emily about life and the challenges of growing up in a world where appearances often seem to matter more than character. Mrs. Emily, Amanda said one afternoon, you've taught me that true elegance isn't in the clothes we wear, but in how we treat others. And you've taught me that the new generation gives me hope, Emily replied. You can change the world if you keep your hearts in the right place. 6 months later, the boutique had become famous not just for its expensive clothes, but for its exceptional service. Fashion magazines wrote articles about the store's transformation, always careful not to mention the personal details of Emily and Richard, respecting their privacy. Victoria had changed completely. She created a program where the store donated a percentage of its sales to educational projects. She also implemented a system where customers could sponsor purchases for those in need, allowing everyone access to quality clothing for special occasions. Mrs. Emily, Victoria said on one of the last days of the year, I want you to know that you saved more than my career. You saved my soul. It wasn't me, Victoria, Emily replied gently. You chose to change. I just showed you it was possible. On the eve of their anniversary, Emily and Richard were at home preparing a special dinner. She wore the tie she had bought for him that first time at the boutique, and he wore it with pride. Do you regret anything from this past year? Richard asked. I regret taking 42 years to see that you were even more extraordinary than I imagined, Emily smiled. And you? I regret keeping secrets from you for so long, Richard admitted, but I don't regret anything we've done together since then. Emily looked around their modest home, which they had chosen to keep even after all the revelations. Richard, do you think we're happy? Emily, my love, after everything we've been through, all the people we've helped, all the lives we've touched, I can say with certainty that we are more than happy. We are fulfilled. That evening, as they danced in the living room to the sound of an 80s romantic song, Emily reflected on how a moment of humiliation had turned into the greatest blessing of their lives. The boutique was now more than just a store. It was a symbol of transformation. Victoria continued working there, but now as a passionate advocate for equality and respect. Sarah had been promoted to assistant manager and used her position to mentor other young saleswomen about the importance of treating everyone with dignity. Dr. Michael had become a close family friend, dining with them at least once a month. His children, now grown and successful, visited Emily regularly, considering her an honorary grandmother. Richard's educational scholarship program had expanded. It now included not only college students, but also technical courses and professional training programs. Emily actively participated in deciding which projects to support. "Do you know what makes me proudest?" Emily said one night as they reviewed proposals for new social projects. "What?" "That none of the people we've helped even know who we are. They only know that someone believes in them." Emily smiled. "It's the purest form of love there is." Richard agreed. They had discovered that true wealth wasn't in being recognized for their good deeds, but in knowing they had made a difference in others' lives. Emily and Richard's story spread quietly through the city, not as gossip, but as inspiration. Other stores in the mall began adopting similar respectful service policies. Wealthy business owners sought Richard's advice on how to use their fortunes for the common good without losing humility. A year later, in the boutique that had been the setting for so much pain and transformation, Emily organized a special event. It was a photo exhibition showcasing all the projects they had supported without identifying the donors. "Mrs. Emily," said a young visitor at the exhibition, "who are the people behind all this?" Emily smiled mysteriously. "They're people who understood that true elegance lies in doing good without expecting anything in return." Victoria approached, now radiant and transformed. "Mrs. Emily, I'd like to announce something important." "What is it?" "I've decided to open my own store, a boutique that from day one will treat everyone with equal respect and dignity." Victoria was emotional. "And I'd like you to be my partner." Emily looked at Richard, who nodded encouragingly. "Victoria, it would be an honor." And so, Dignity Boutique was born, a new concept for a clothing store where service was based on mutual respect, regardless of a customer's financial status. The store became a model copied by businesses across the country. Emily continued working 3 days a week, not because she needed the money, but because she had found her true calling, helping people feel valued and respected. Richard still oversaw his businesses personally, but now with Emily by his side for major decisions. They had become a true team, not just in marriage, but in their efforts to make the world a better place. On the night of their 43rd wedding anniversary, Emily and Richard stood on the terrace of one of their buildings, looking out at the lights of New York City below them. "Richard, do you remember when we were young and dreamed of making a difference in the world?" "I do. You said you wanted people to remember us as good people." "Did we succeed?" Emily asked. Richard pointed to the city lights. "Down below, there are hundreds of young people studying with scholarships we provide. There are families living in homes we helped build. There are doctors saving lives because they could graduate with our help. And there are people treating others with more respect because they learned that every person has value," Emily added. "So yes, my love, we've managed to make a difference. And most importantly, we did it together." Emily nestled into Richard's arms. "You know what's ironic? If that saleswoman hadn't humiliated me in that boutique, maybe we'd never have gotten this far." "Sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as the worst moments," Richard agreed. "And sometimes," Emily said, "the people who hurt us the most end up becoming those who learn and grow the most." They remained silent for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the journey they had traveled. "Emily, can I ask you something I never have?" "Of course. Are you truly happy with all this, with all these responsibilities, with all this attention?" Emily smiled. "Richard, I spent 42 years being happy as your wife. Now I have the chance to be happy as your partner in something bigger than ourselves. How could I not be happy? And if we had to choose between wealth and our simple life? I'd choose you, Emily answered without hesitation. I'd always choose you. The money only made it possible to help more people, but my happiness has always come from being by your side. Richard kissed his wife's forehead. That's why I've loved you for so many years. You've always known what truly matters. The next morning they received a special letter. It was from a young woman named Emma, one of the first recipients of their scholarships, who was now a licensed doctor. Dear anonymous benefactors, the letter read, I'll never know who you are, but I want you to know you've changed not just my life, but the lives of all the people I'll be able to help as a doctor. Yesterday I saved a child's life. In part, it was thanks to you. I hope one day I can pay forward the generosity I've received. With love and eternal gratitude, Emma, Emily cried as she read the letter. Richard, do you see? It's not about us. It was never about us. It's about creating a chain of kindness that spreads endlessly. And you know what's most beautiful? Richard said. Emma will probably help others without knowing she was inspired by our help, and those people will help others, and so on. It's like throwing a stone into a lake, Emily reflected. The ripples spread far beyond what we can see. That day, they made an important decision. They created an endowment fund that would continue helping people even after they were gone. It was their way of ensuring the chain of kindness would last forever. Victoria had become more than a transformed former employee. She was now one of Emily's closest friends. Together, they gave talks at schools and businesses about the importance of respect and human dignity. Mrs. Emily, Victoria said during one of their talks, could you tell these young people how a single action can change the course of a life? Emily addressed the college students, listening intently. My dears, just over a year ago, I walked into a store to buy a gift for my husband. I was humiliated, disrespected, treated as if I were less important than others. The students listened in silence. In that moment, I could have chosen bitterness, resentment, anger. Instead, I chose compassion, Emily continued, and that choice transformed not just my life, but the lives of dozens of others. A student raised their hand. Mrs. Emily, how did you manage to forgive someone who treated you so badly? Because I realized that people who hurt others are often suffering inside themselves, Emily replied. Victoria here beside me was a wounded person who was passing on her pain. When I offered understanding instead of anger, she was able to heal and transform. Victoria nodded. It's true, I acted cruelly because I had been hurt when I was young. Mrs. Emily showed me I could choose to break that cycle of pain instead of perpetuating it. Another student asked, but isn't it hard to always be kind when others are cruel? Very hard, Emily admitted. But the alternative is worse. Anger and resentment poison those who carry them. Kindness, even when unreturned, frees our soul. And sometimes, Victoria added, kindness completely transforms the person who receives it. I'm living proof of that. After the talk, a young student approached Emily. Mrs. Emily, can I share something personal? Of course, dear. My mother works as a cleaner at a big company. Every day she comes home telling me how badly she's treated by some employees, how they act like she's invisible. The girl was emotional. After hearing your story, I want to ask her to teach me to treat everyone with respect, no matter their position. Emily hugged the girl. You've just given me the greatest gift I could receive. Knowing our story will inspire you to treat others better. And I'll share your story with my friends, the girl promised, so they can learn too. That night, Emily told Richard about the conversation with the student. Do you see how our story is spreading? How it's inspiring people to be better? It's exactly what we hoped for when we decided to make our experience public, Richard said. We didn't want to be seen as heroes, but as examples that anyone can choose to be better. And you know what moves me the most, Emily said. Victoria is now helping others who made the same mistakes she did. She's using her experience to teach about change and redemption. Indeed, Victoria had created a program called Second Chances, where people who had mistreated others had the opportunity to redeem themselves through volunteer work and lessons in empathy. Sarah, the former saleswoman, now managed 3 stores of the Dignity boutique chain, which had expanded to other cities. She implemented the principles she'd learned from Emily in each new location. Dr. Michael continued his medical work, but now also dedicated time to training other doctors on the importance of treating every patient with equal respect, regardless of their social status. 2 years after the initial incident, the original boutique where it all began had been transformed into the headquarters of a foundation dedicated to fighting discrimination in customer service. The sign at the entrance read, "Every person deserves dignity." Emily and Richard still lived in their simple home, drove modest cars and maintained the humble lifestyle they'd always valued. But now their lives were filled with an even greater purpose. "Richard, do you remember how it all started?" Emily asked one afternoon as they visited one of the schools they'd helped renovate. "I do. You crying over a tie you couldn't buy. And now look where we are." Emily gestured to the children playing in the school's renovated courtyard. Who could have imagined so much good would come from such a painful moment? "Sometimes I think it was fate," Richard said, "as if everything had to happen exactly that way for us to get here." A child approached them. "Are you Mrs. Emily who helped renovate our school?" "I helped a little," Emily replied modestly. "My teacher said you believe everyone is important. Is that true?" Emily knelt down to be at the child's level. "It's true, my dear. You matter, I matter, your teacher matters. Everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and respect. Even poor people. Especially poor people," Emily said firmly, "because sometimes they need to be reminded of how valuable they are." The child smiled and ran back to play with friends. Richard watched the scene with tears in his eyes. "Emily, do you realize you just planted a seed in that child's heart? A seed that could change how she treats others for the rest of her life. And she'll plant similar seeds in other people's hearts," Emily replied. "That's how we change the world, one person at a time." That evening, they received a call from Amanda, Sarah's sister, who had graduated from medical school with one of their scholarships. "Mrs. Emily, Mr. Richard, I have wonderful news," Amanda said excitedly over the phone. "What is it, dear?" "I've just been accepted for a pediatric residency at General Hospital. And more, I've created a project to provide free medical care in underserved communities. I want to give back for everything you've done for me." Emily and Richard exchanged glances, their hearts overflowing with pride and joy. "Amanda, you owe us nothing," Richard said. "You achieved all this through your own hard work and dedication." "But you gave me the opportunity," Amanda insisted. "And now I want to pass that opportunity forward." "That's exactly how it should be," Emily agreed. "You received help when you needed it, and now you'll help others who need it. It's the perfect cycle of kindness." After hanging up, Emily and Richard sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what had grown from a simple act of compassion. "Richard, sometimes I'm afraid this is all a dream," Emily admitted. "If it is, it's a dream we've been living together for over 40 years, Richard replied, "and it's a dream that's changing many people's lives. Do you think we've done enough?" Richard took Emily's hands. "My love, we'll never do enough if we think of all the need in the world, but we've done more than many, and we've done it with genuine love. That has to be enough." "And you know what's most beautiful?" Emily said. "We don't have to do it all alone. We've inspired others to do their part too." The following week, they received a special invitation. The mayor of New York City wanted to honor them for their contributions to the city, but they politely declined. "Why don't we want the recognition?" Emily asked. "Because public praise isn't our motivation," Richard explained. "We want people to be inspired by the actions, not by us as individuals. And because some of the best things we do are the ones no one ever knows about," Emily added. Indeed, they continued performing anonymous acts of kindness, paying medical bills for struggling families, offering secret scholarships, helping small business owners in financial trouble, always without revealing their identity. 3 years after the incident at the boutique, Emily was organizing her schedule when she noticed a special date, the anniversary of her first visit to that store. "Richard, would you like to visit the original boutique today?" she asked. "Why? To relive painful memories?" "No, to celebrate how far we've come since then," Emily smiled. And to see how that place has changed. When they arrived, they found a scene completely different from what they'd witnessed years before. The store was full of customers from all walks of life, each treated with equal respect and warmth. Victoria greeted them with a warm embrace. "Mrs. Emily, Mr. Richard. What a wonderful surprise. We wanted to see how things are going here," said Emily. "See for yourselves." Victoria led them through the store. Emily noticed a young saleswoman patiently helping an elderly lady choose a dress, kindly explaining fabrics and styles. In another corner, another employee was showing ties to a man of obviously limited means, treating him with the same deference she would give a millionaire. "This is exactly how it should be," Emily murmured, moved. "And do you know what's most beautiful?" said Victoria. "The newer saleswomen don't even know the full story. They only know that here, everyone is treated with respect. It's become our natural culture." Sarah approached, now a confident and mature woman. "Mrs. Emily, how wonderful to see you. I have news to share." "What is it?" "Our store chain is opening a branch in every state capital, and in each one, we'll have a training program based on your story." Sarah was beaming. "Thousands of people will learn about respect and human dignity." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "Sarah, when all this began, I just wanted to buy a tie for my husband. And that tie turned into a quiet revolution," said Sarah. "A revolution built on kindness." As they walked back home, Emily and Richard reflected on the extraordinary journey they'd lived. "Richard, do you think we're special people?" "I think we're ordinary people who made special choices," Richard replied. "The difference isn't in who we are, but in what we choose to do." "And in what we choose to be," Emily added. "We chose to be kind even when others were cruel. We chose to be generous even when others were selfish. And we chose to use our good fortune to help others find their own," Richard concluded. That evening, as they dined in their simple kitchen, Emily looked at the navy blue tie she'd bought 3 years ago, now framed on the wall as a reminder of their journey. "Richard, do you know what the real gift of that tie was?" "What?" "It wasn't the object itself. It was the journey it led us on. It was the discovery that we can turn pain into purpose, humiliation into humility, and suffering into service." Richard followed her gaze to the framed tie. "And you know what else? That cruel saleswoman could never have imagined her cruelty would end up being the catalyst for so much kindness. Sometimes bad people do things that, unintentionally, lead to wonderful outcomes," Emily reflected. "Not because of their malice, but because of how we choose to respond to it. It's like that saying you always repeat, 'We can't control what others do to us, but we can control how we react.'" Emily smiled. "And our reaction created a wave of kindness that keeps spreading." 6 months later, they received a letter that moved them deeply. It was from a woman in Boston who'd heard their story through a friend. "Dear Emily and Richard," the letter read, "I've never met you, but your story changed my life. I was going through a difficult divorce and becoming a bitter, cruel person to everyone around me. When I heard how you turned pain into purpose, I decided to do the same. I started volunteering at a shelter for vulnerable women. Today, 2 years later, I'm the director of that shelter, and we've helped over 200 women rebuild their lives. Thank you for showing me we can always choose to be better. With gratitude, Mary Johnson." "Richard, do you see?" Emily said after reading the letter. "Our story traveled to Boston and inspired someone we've never met to help 200 women. And who knows how many people those 200 women will inspire," Richard added. "It's an endless chain of kindness." Emily folded the letter carefully. "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write back to Mary Johnson. I want to hear her story, and maybe we can help her shelter." "Always thinking of how to do more good," Richard smiled. "That's why I love you." "And that's why our life has so much meaning," Emily replied, "because it's focused on something bigger than ourselves." The next morning, Emily called Mary Johnson in Boston. The conversation lasted 2 hours, during which they discovered they had much in common despite never having met. "Mary, what do you need most to help these women?" Emily asked. "Resources for job training. Many of them want to work but lack professional skills," Mary answered. What if we could create a sponsored vocational training program? It would be a dream come true, Mary said, moved. A week later, the first job training center for women in vulnerable situations was being planned in Boston, quietly funded by Emily and Richard. Another seed planted, Richard remarked as they signed the documents. And this time in another state, Emily added, our tree of kindness is spreading roots across the country. Victoria, who had become a respected consultant in compassionate care, began receiving invitations to speak in other countries. Her story of personal transformation inspired business leaders worldwide. Mrs. Emily, Victoria said during one visit, I just received an invitation to speak at an international retail conference in England. How wonderful! Will you accept? Only if you allow me to share our story, Victoria replied. Of course, without revealing any personal details you'd prefer to keep private. Emily looked at Richard, who nodded. Tell our story, Victoria. The more people know change is possible, the more change we'll see in the world. And remember to emphasize that anyone can transform, Richard added. You're living proof of that. 2 months later, Victoria stood in London, speaking to an audience of 500 business leaders from 20 different countries. Her presentation was titled, How Humiliation Became Humility, a Journey of Personal and Professional Redemption. By the end, entrepreneurs from various nations approached her, eager to implement similar programs in their companies. The seed planted in a New York City boutique was now sprouting on European soil. Back in the United States, Emily and Richard watched the international ripple effects of their story with joy and humility. Richard, did you ever imagine our experience could inspire change in other countries? Never, Richard admitted, but it makes me think kindness is universal. No matter where people live, they recognize and are moved by compassion. And by the possibility of change, Emily added. Everyone has treated someone poorly at some point. Our story shows redemption is possible. That year, on the 4th anniversary of the boutique incident, Emily and Richard decided to host a special gathering, not to celebrate the painful moment, but to honor all the transformations it had sparked. They invited Victoria, Sarah, Dr. Michael and their families, Amanda and other doctors who had benefited from their scholarships, Mary Johnson, who came all the way from Boston, and dozens of others whose lives had been touched by their story. The celebration was held in the community hall of one of the schools they had helped renovate. A simple but deeply meaningful setting. Dear friends, Emily said, raising a toast, we're here not to congratulate ourselves but to celebrate something far greater. We are celebrating proof that kindness begets kindness, that compassion creates more compassion, and that each of us has the power to make a difference in the world. And we are celebrating every single person here today, Richard added, because you have turned a painful lesson into an endless chain of love and transformation. Victoria stood up. I'd like to say a few words, if I may. Everyone fell silent. 4 years ago, I was a wounded person who passed on my pain. I treated others poorly because I had been treated poorly. I thought the world owed me something and that I had the right to be cruel. Victoria paused, emotional. Mrs. Emily and Mr. Richard could have destroyed me. They had the power to do so. Instead, they chose to show me a better path, not through punishment, but through understanding. Not through revenge, but through compassion. She looked directly at Emily. You didn't just save my career, you saved my soul. And through my transformation, hundreds of others have learned that change is possible, that it's possible to be better. Emotional applause filled the room. Dr. Michael also stood. I'd like to add something. Emily and Richard taught me that true wealth isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by what we share. It's not about what we receive, but what we give, he continued. They proved it's possible to be financially successful without losing our humanity. More than that, they proved that real success comes from using our resources to lift others up. Amanda, now a confident doctor, also spoke up. As one of the recipients of your scholarships, I can say you didn't just give me an education, you gave me hope. And I pass that hope on to every patient I treat, especially those most in need. Emily's eyes welled with tears. My dears, you're giving me too much credit. All we did was choose love over hate, understanding over judgment. But that choice made all the difference, Sarah said, because you showed that it's always possible to choose kindness, even when others choose cruelty. Mary Johnson, who had traveled from Boston just for the celebration, also spoke. I heard your story through a friend and never imagined I'd be here speaking with you in person. But you taught me that miracles happen when we decide to be instruments of kindness. She added, the vocational training center we started in Boston has already graduated 150 women. These women are supporting their families, educating their children, and building better futures. And it all began with your story of compassion. Richard was moved. Mary, you and everyone here are proof that when we plant seeds of kindness, they grow and bear fruit far beyond what we can imagine. A young man who had received one of the scholarships and was now an engineer stood. I'd like to announce something special. We, the recipients of your scholarships, have formed an association. Our goal is to provide scholarships for the next generation of students in need. We want to carry forward what you started, another young man added. We want to ensure the chain of kindness never breaks. Emily could no longer hold back her tears. You've understood the real lesson. It's not about being forever grateful. It's about passing on what you've received. That's exactly how we change the world, Richard agreed. One generation helping the next, each passing forward more than they received. The celebration continued late into the night, with stories shared, new projects planned, and friendships strengthened. It was more than a party. It was a renewal of commitment to kindness. When the party ended and everyone had left, Emily and Richard stayed alone in the hall, helping to clean and organize. Richard, do you know what moves me the most about all this? What? That our story isn't just ours anymore. It belongs to all these people who were inspired by it and created their own stories of transformation, Emily smiled. We're just the starting point of something much bigger. And do you know what's most beautiful? Richard said. Even if we disappeared tomorrow, the chain of kindness would keep going. It's taken on a life of its own. It's real immortality, Emily reflected. Not the immortality of fame or a name, but the immortality of the positive impact we've created. 5 years after the initial incident, Emily and Richard, now nearly 70, remained active in their social projects, but had begun delegating more responsibilities to the people they had inspired and trained. Victoria had become a respected international speaker and business transformation consultant. Sarah managed a network of 50 stores across the United States based on principles of dignity and respect. Dr. Michael coordinated a national program for compassionate medical care. Emily, do you think it's time for us to officially retire? Richard asked one sunny morning. Retire from what? From living with purpose? Emily laughed. Richard, as long as we have our health and clarity, we'll keep making a difference. Maybe in different ways, but always making one. You're right, but maybe it's time we write our full story, so it can inspire even more people, Richard suggested. Only if it's to teach, not to glorify us. Emily was firm. I want people to understand the principles, not idolize us as individuals. And so they began working on their memoirs, not as a traditional autobiography, but as a guide for personal and social transformation based on their real experiences. The book, From Humiliation to Humility, A Journey of Transformation, was published 2 years later, with all royalties going to the social projects they had created. Richard, what do you hope people take from our story? I hope they understand that every moment of pain can be turned into purpose, that every negative experience can become an opportunity for growth, and that we all have the power to choose how we respond to life's circumstances. And I hope they realize that true wealth lies in how much good we can do for others, Emily added. It doesn't matter if we have a lot or a little money, we all have something to give. The book became a success, not because of sales numbers, but because of its impact. Reading groups formed across the country to discuss its lessons. Companies implemented programs based on its principles. Schools included their story in moral and civic education curricula. A decade after the original incident, Emily and Richard were invited to a special ceremony at the boutique where it had all begun. The place had officially become a landmark of social transformation with a commemorative plaque at the entrance. 10 years, Emily said, reading the plaque. It feels like a lifetime and yet just like yesterday. That's because every single day of these 10 years was lived with intensity and purpose, Richard replied. When we live like that, time takes on a different quality. Victoria, now a completely transformed and respected woman in her field, greeted them with a warm embrace. Mrs. Emily, Mr. Richard, welcome back to where it all began. And where it all continues, Emily corrected, because transformation never stops, does it? Never, Victoria agreed. Every day I learn something new about kindness, about compassion, about the human capacity for change. They entered the store, now completely redesigned as a center for education on human rights and personal dignity. Where only expensive clothes had once been sold, free courses on respect, empathy, and social transformation were now also offered. Look at this, said Sarah, pointing to a group of teenagers participating in a workshop on how to treat everyone with dignity. These young people will grow up knowing that every person has value. Emily watched the teenagers with tenderness. Our true hope lies with them, with a generation learning early on that kindness is strength, not weakness. One of the teenagers recognized her and approached. Are you Mrs. Emily from the story we studied in school? Yes, that's me, Emily replied with a smile. Can I ask you something? How did you manage to forgive someone who was so cruel? Emily knelt to be at the young person's eye level, because I realized holding on to anger would only hurt me, and because I understood that everyone can change if given a chance. Even really bad people. Especially people who seem really bad, Emily said, because often those people are suffering inside. When we offer understanding instead of more anger, sometimes we can help them heal. The teenager nodded thoughtfully. I'll try that with the classmate who always picks on me at school. Try, but always be careful and ask for help from adults when needed, Emily advised. Kindness matters, but so does your safety. After speaking with the young people, Emily, Richard, and Victoria sat in the cafe that now occupied what had once been the manager's office. Victoria, looking back, do you regret anything? Richard asked. I deeply regret being cruel, Victoria answered without hesitation. But I don't regret the final outcome because it led me to become a better person. If I could go back in time, I'd treat Mrs. Emily with respect from the very beginning. But I can't change the past, I can only work to create a better future. And that's exactly what you've done, Emily said. Your transformation has inspired hundreds of others to change too. And you know what's amazing? Victoria added. Sometimes I get letters from people who heard me speak and decided to change how they treat others. One day's cruelty turned into a wave of kindness that keeps spreading. Richard smiled. It's proof that God, or the universe, or fate, call it what you will, has mysterious ways of turning bad into good. As long as we choose to be instruments of that change, Emily added. That evening at home, Emily and Richard were on the terrace gazing at the stars when he asked a question he'd been thinking about for a while. Emily, if you had to sum up what we've learned these past 10 years in one sentence, what would it be? Emily thought for a moment. That love always wins, but only when we choose to apply it, even in the hardest situations. And yours? That everyone has the power to turn pain into purpose, as long as they're willing to make the right choices, Richard replied. Two sides of the same truth, Emily reflected. Love and choice, they're the forces behind every real transformation. They sat in silence for a while, soaking in the peace of a life well lived and with clear purpose. Richard, are you satisfied with our journey? More than satisfied. I'm grateful, he took her hand. Grateful to have lived all of this beside the woman I love. Grateful we've used our blessings to bless others. Grateful we've proven it's possible to grow older without losing the ability to dream and transform. And I'm grateful to have learned it's never too late to start a new chapter, Emily said. At 62, when everything happened, I thought my life was already set. I discovered I was just beginning the most meaningful part. The following month, they received a very special visit. It was a group of journalism college students making a documentary about social transformation in the United States. Mr. Richard, Mrs. Emily, would you agree to participate in our documentary? Asked the project coordinator, a young woman named Rebecca. "It depends on the focus of the documentary," Emily replied cautiously. "We don't want to be portrayed as heroes or saints. We're ordinary people who made simple choices." "That's exactly our approach," said Rebecca. "We want to show how ordinary people can create extraordinary change through everyday acts of kindness and compassion. And we want to inspire others to believe they can make a difference too," added another student. "You don't need to be rich or famous to transform the world around you." Emily and Richard agreed to participate, but with one condition: that the documentary focus more on the people inspired by their story than on themselves. The documentary, Waves of Kindness: How Small Actions Create Big Transformations, was released 2 years later and went viral on social media, inspiring similar movements in cities across the country. "Richard, have you seen the messages we're getting because of the documentary?" Emily held up a tablet with hundreds of messages from people all over the United States, sharing their own stories of transformation. "I've read a few. It's amazing how our story is inspiring people we've never met to become better versions of themselves." Richard was moved. "Look at this message from a teacher in Seattle who started an anti-bullying project based on our experience. And this one from a businessman in Denver who completely changed his company's culture after watching the documentary." Emily pointed to another message. "We're starting a quiet revolution of kindness," Richard murmured. "A revolution that doesn't need weapons or violence, just hearts willing to choose good." 15 years after the initial incident, Emily and Richard, now in their late 70s, remained active, but had passed leadership of most of their projects to the new generation they had inspired and trained. Victoria had become one of the world's leading experts in business transformation through humanization. Sarah ran an international foundation focused on human dignity. Dr. Michael coordinated programs for compassionate healthcare in several Latin American countries. "Emily, do you think we've fulfilled our mission?" Richard asked one quiet afternoon. "I think our mission never ends," Emily replied, "but we've created something that will continue long after we're gone, and that's more than many people accomplish in a lifetime." "You know what makes me proudest?" "What?" "That we proved wealth and kindness aren't incompatible. That it's possible to be financially successful and still keep your humanity," Richard reflected. "How many business people today build their fortunes thinking about how they can help others, instead of just accumulating more for themselves?" "And we proved people can really change," Emily added. "Victoria is living proof that it's never too late to become a better person. And that education truly transforms when it comes from the heart, not just the mind," said Richard. "Every young person we helped didn't just earn a degree. They learned values they'll pass on to their children and grandchildren. That year, they made an important decision. They created an ethical will in addition to their legal will, where they documented all the lessons they'd learned and the principles they hoped would endure after they were gone. For future generations, they wrote, we leave not only financial resources, but above all, the legacy that it is possible to turn any negative experience into positive strength, that it is possible to use success to lift others up rather than just oneself, and that the true wealth of a life is measured by the good we manage to do for others. The ethical will was included in the foundation they created, ensuring their philosophies and methods would continue to be taught and applied indefinitely. Richard, if we had to give one final piece of advice to people, what would it be? That they never underestimate the power of a simple act of kindness, Richard replied. Our entire journey began with you wanting to buy a tie with love. Look where that took us. And that they always remember they have a choice, Emily added. In any situation, no matter how difficult, we can always choose how to respond, and that choice defines who we are. 20 years after that Thursday that changed their lives, Emily and Richard were honored in a special ceremony at the boutique that had become an international center for the study of human dignity. Hundreds of people were present, former scholars who were now doctors, engineers, teachers, business owners who had transformed their companies, social activists inspired by their story, and even representatives from other countries who had implemented programs based on their methods. Mrs. Emily, Mr. Richard, said the mayor of New York City, you've proven that true heroes are not those who win battles with swords, but those who win hearts with kindness. Emily stood to speak, still sharp and eloquent at 82. Dear friends, we are not heroes. We are simply two people who learned that life becomes richer when shared, more meaningful when it has purpose, and more beautiful when lived in service to others. What we've done, any of you can do. You don't need material wealth. You only need richness of spirit and the willingness to choose good even when it's hard. Richard also wanted to speak. What began as a humiliation in a clothing store turned into a celebration of the human capacity for transformation. It proves there is no completely negative experience if we're willing to learn and grow from it. Our greatest pride isn't the buildings we own or the money we've accumulated. It's knowing we've inspired others to be better, to treat people with more kindness, and to use their resources and talents to make a positive difference in the world. Victoria, now a 60-year-old woman respected internationally, approached the microphone. 20 years ago, I was a broken person who passed on my pain through cruelty. These two human angels could have destroyed me. Instead, they saved me. Not only did they forgive me, but they taught me to forgive myself and transform. Today, I can proudly say I dedicate my life to helping others make the same transformations I did. And all of this exists because one day Emily and Richard chose love over hate. The ceremony continued with moving testimonies from dozens whose lives had been touched directly or indirectly by Emily and Richard's story. A former scholar, now a neurosurgeon, spoke of saving over 1,000 lives in his career. A businesswoman shared how she had transformed her company into one of the most humane in the country. A teacher explained how he used Emily and Richard's story to teach values to thousands of students. You've created a global family of people committed to kindness, said Dr. Michael, now the International Coordinator for Humanized Healthcare Programs. A family that keeps growing and spreading across the world. At the end of the ceremony, Emily and Richard walked one last time through the boutique where it had all begun. The place now housed a museum of human dignity with interactive exhibits that taught about respect, empathy, and social transformation. Richard, did you ever imagine that terrible day would turn into all this? Never, Richard admitted, but it taught me that God has plans greater than we can imagine. Our role is simply to do our part with love and let Him take care of the rest. And our part was choosing love, Emily said. In every moment, every decision, every interaction, always love. They stopped in front of a photo on the wall, the navy blue tie Emily had bought 20 years earlier, now on display as a symbol of how small acts of love can have endless consequences. Do you know what's most beautiful about this tie? Emily asked. What? That it represents all the gifts of love we never got to give, all the gestures of kindness that were stopped by prejudice or cruelty. Emily gently touched the glass of the frame. Everyone who sees this tie remembers that every act of love is sacred, no matter how simple it seems. Richard hugged her, and they remember that love always finds a way to win, even when it seems impossible. That evening, at home, Emily and Richard sat on their porch, watching the sunset over New York City. At 82 and 84 years old, respectively, they knew their days were precious. Emily, if we could live it all again, would you change anything? Just one thing, Emily replied. I would have started doing social work sooner. We wasted so many years just accumulating wealth without properly using the power it gave us to help others. But maybe we weren't ready before, Richard reflected. Maybe we needed to go through the experience of humiliation to truly understand what compassion means. You're right. Maybe everything happened at the right time. Emily took his hand. And you? Would you change anything? I would have told you about our financial situation from the beginning, Richard said. But in the end, keeping it a secret forced me to prove that my character didn't depend on money. And when you found out the truth, it was even more special because you already loved me for the man I was, not for what I had. And I still love the man you are, Emily said. At 84, you're still the kind, hard-working young man I fell in love with over 50 years ago. And you're still the wise, compassionate woman who teaches me every day how to be a better person, Richard replied. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Somewhere down there, they knew there were students studying on scholarships they'd funded. Doctors saving lives because they'd been able to graduate. Families living in homes they'd helped build. Richard, do you think we're special people? I think we're people who were given special opportunities and made special choices, Richard answered. The difference isn't in what we were given, but in what we did with what we were given. And in what we can still do, Emily added. As long as we're alive, there will always be more love to give, more people to help, more kindness to spread. That's true. Our mission only ends when our hearts stop beating. And even then, what we've built will keep living on in the lives of everyone we've touched. A month later, Emily received an exciting call. It was from a young journalist named Rachel, granddaughter of Mary Johnson, the woman from Boston who had founded the support home for vulnerable women. Mrs. Emily, my grandmother told me that you and Mr. Richard were essential in creating our support home, Rachel said. Your grandmother is an extraordinary woman, my dear. We only provided resources. She did all the real work, replied Emily. That's why I'm calling. I just graduated with a degree in journalism and want to do a series of stories about all the people inspired by your story. I've already found over 200 social projects across the United States that started directly or indirectly because of your example. Emily was moved. 200 projects? And I'm just beginning my research, said Rachel. Mrs. Emily, you've created a network of kindness that spreads across the country, maybe even the whole world. That evening, Emily shared the conversation with Richard. Did you hear? 200 projects inspired by our story. And how many lives does each project touch? Richard asked. If each one helps at least 50 people a year, we're talking about 10,000 lives transformed annually. And those 10,000 people will influence others, said Emily. It's truly an endless wave of kindness. You know what this makes me think, Richard said. That cruel saleswoman from 20 years ago, without knowing it, planted the seed for all of this. If she only knew. Maybe she does, Emily mused. Who knows where Jennifer is today? Who knows if our story reached her and made her reflect on her own actions? It would be interesting to find out, Richard agreed. The following week, Emily decided to look into Jennifer, the saleswoman who had been complicit in the humiliation 2 decades earlier. She discovered Jennifer had moved cities and now worked as a receptionist at a small hospital. Emily decided to visit her. When she arrived at the hospital, Emily asked for Jennifer at the front desk. A few minutes later, a woman around 50 appeared, clearly puzzled about who might be looking for her. Jennifer? Emily asked gently. Yes, that's me. How can I help you? Jennifer didn't recognize her immediately. 20 years and the natural changes of age had altered both their appearances. My name is Emily Parker. We met 20 years ago at a boutique in New York City. The color drained from Jennifer's face. Mrs. Emily, she stammered. It's all right, Emily said softly. I didn't come here to confront you. I came to talk. Jennifer took her to a quiet cafe near the hospital. Along the way, she was visibly nervous. Mrs. Emily, all these years I've thought about that day, Jennifer began as they sat down. I've thought about how cruel I was, how wrong I was. What made you reflect on it? A few years later, I went through something similar myself. I was humiliated in an expensive store while trying to buy a gift for my daughter. In that moment, I understood exactly how you must have felt. Tears welled in Jennifer's eyes. And how did you respond to that experience? I changed completely, Jennifer said. I left that shallow world of luxury boutiques and came to work here at the hospital. Here I interact with people from all walks of life every day, and I treat every one of them with the same respect and kindness. Emily smiled. So you were transformed too. Because of what I did to you, yes, Jennifer admitted. Mrs. Emily, can you ever forgive me? I know I don't deserve it, but... Jennifer, you were forgiven long ago, Emily said, taking her hands. Actually, I came here to thank you. Thank me. If you and Victoria hadn't humiliated me that day, I would never have discovered the strength I had inside. I would never have met all the wonderful people I've known. I would never have made all the difference I've been able to make, Emily explained. Your cruelty, without you knowing it, planted the seed for so much good in the world. Jennifer openly wept. Mrs. Emily, you're an angel. How can you turn even my wickedness into something positive? Because I've learned that every experience, good or bad, can be turned into a lesson and growth, said Emily. And because I believe everyone can change, including you. I have changed, Jennifer promised, and I've never been cruel to anyone again. I've worked here for 15 years and try every day to be a little better than yesterday. Then you're also part of the chain of kindness we've created, Emily replied. Every person you treat well here at the hospital, every smile you offer someone who's suffering, is an extension of the transformation that began on that terrible day. They talked for another 2 hours, and Emily discovered that Jennifer had truly become a compassionate and dedicated person. She worked extra shifts to help colleagues, volunteered to comfort lonely patients, and had even started a small project to collect clothes for families in need. Jennifer, I'd like to invite you to something, Emily said before leaving. What? Next month, we're having a gathering with all the people touched by our story. Victoria will be there. I'd like you to come too. I don't know if I should. Jennifer hesitated. You should. You're part of the story, and your transformation could inspire others who've also made mistakes and want to change, Emily said firmly. We all deserve redemption when we're truly sorry and working to be better. A month later, at the annual gathering that had become a tradition, Jennifer was present alongside Victoria, Emily, Richard, and dozens of others whose lives had been touched by the story. I'd like to introduce someone special, Emily said to the group. This is Jennifer, who 20 years ago was also part of the events that changed our lives. Victoria looked at Jennifer in surprise. They hadn't seen each other in 2 decades. Jennifer and I made the same mistake, Victoria said, stepping closer to her former colleague. But we both got the chance to redeem ourselves. It's good to see you here. Victoria, I'm sorry I didn't step in that day, Jennifer said. I should have tried to stop you. Don't apologize, Victoria replied. We were both wounded people making bad choices. What matters is that we both learned and changed. Jennifer then addressed the group. 20 years ago, I was complicit in a terrible act of cruelty. I didn't intervene when I should have. I didn't defend when I should have. Since then, I've dedicated my life to never letting that happen again. I work at a public hospital where I see people at their most vulnerable. Every day I choose to be the person I wish had been in that boutique 20 years ago. She paused, emotional. Mrs. Emily and Mr. Richard taught me it's never too late to change, never too late to choose to be better. If someone like me can transform, anyone can. Touched applause filled the room. Dr. Michael stood up. Jennifer, your presence here proves something very important, that our family of transformation doesn't just include people who've done good from the start, but also those who've made mistakes and had the courage to change. It's true, Richard agreed. The courage to change is just as valuable as the courage to always do what's right. Sarah also spoke up. Jennifer, your story will inspire so many who think they've made unforgivable mistakes. You prove there's always hope for redemption. That night, Emily reflected on the gathering with Richard. Did you see how important it was to have Jennifer there? I did. She completes the circle of our story, Richard said. Now we have examples of transformation at every level. The victims who chose to forgive, the aggressors who chose to change, and all the people inspired by their examples. And it proves our story isn't about perfect people doing the right thing, Emily added. It's about imperfect people making better choices. It's much more powerful that way, agreed Richard, because everyone relates to the struggle of trying to be better. 2 years later, at 84, Emily was diagnosed with a heart condition that would limit her activities. The doctor was clear. She still had a few years left, but she needed to slow down. Richard, I'm not sad, Emily said after receiving the news. I've had an extraordinary life. I've loved and been loved. I've made a difference in the world. What more could a person ask for? I wanted more time, Richard admitted, tears in his eyes. More time to travel together, more projects to complete, more people to help. Richard, look around us. Emily gestured to the hundreds of letters and messages they regularly received from people helped by their projects. Our work will live on through all these people. We've planted seeds that will grow for generations. But I wanted to plant more seeds with you. And you will, Emily said, taking his hands. Every time you treat someone with kindness, Every time you use our fortune to help others, every time you choose love over fear, you'll be planting seeds I helped create too. In the following months, Emily used her limited strength for one last series of important tasks. She visited all the major projects they had created, recorded video messages for future events, and wrote personal letters to each of the people who had been especially important in her journey. "Victoria," Emily said during one of her last visits to the boutique museum, "I want you to know your transformation was one of the greatest joys of my life. You proved that forgiveness and compassion can truly change hearts." "Mrs. Emily, you saved my life," Victoria replied, crying, "and you taught me it's possible to live with purpose and dignity. And now you teach that to others," Emily said. The chain continues. To Sarah, she said, "You took our seed and planted an entire forest. The stores you manage are centers of human dignity. Keep spreading respect wherever you go." To Dr. Michael, "You've proven that healthcare professionals can heal not just bodies, but souls. Keep humanizing medicine." To Jennifer, "Your courage to change and redeem yourself is an example to us all. Keep being the person you wish had existed when you needed help." To all the former scholarship recipients, you are our most precious legacy. Every life you touch with kindness will be an extension of the love we planted together. In her final months, Emily spent most of her time at home with Richard, revisiting photo albums, rereading letters from people they'd helped, and reflecting on the meaning of their lives. "Richard, do you remember what we used to dream about when we were young? We dreamed of having a life that mattered, of leaving the world a little better than we found it," he replied. "Did we succeed?" Emily asked. Richard looked around the room decorated with photos of renovated schools, diplomas of former scholars, thank you letters, and certificates from various social projects. "My love, we achieved far more than we dreamed. We created a global family of people dedicated to kindness. We inspired transformations that will continue for generations. We proved love always wins when we have the courage to act on it." "Then I can go in peace," Emily said softly. "Don't say that," Richard protested. "Richard, departure is part of the journey. And when my time comes, I want you to continue our mission with joy, not sorrow," Emily said firmly. "I want you to remember how happy we were, how much love we created, how many lives we touched. How will I live without you?" "You won't live without me," said Emily, smiling. "I'll live through you. Every act of kindness you do, every person you help, every loving choice you make, I'll be there." On a sunny spring morning, Emily Parker passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 85, holding Richard's hand. The funeral was an extraordinary celebration of a life well lived. Hundreds of people were present. Former scholarship recipients, beneficiaries of social projects, transformed business people, activists inspired by her story. "Mrs. Emily didn't die," said Victoria in her speech. "She transformed. Now she lives in every act of kindness we practice, in every person we choose to treat with dignity, in every loving choice we make. She taught us that true immortality isn't about living forever, but about creating something that lasts forever," added Dr. Michael. "And what she created, this global network of kindness, is truly immortal." Richard, at 86, was visibly shaken but still strong. "Emily made me promise to continue our mission with joy, not sorrow. That's what I intend to do. Every project we support, every life we touch, will be a tribute to the extraordinary woman who was my partner for over 50 years. In the months that followed, Richard immersed himself even deeper in social work. It was his way of coping with the longing and honoring Emily's memory. He established the Emily Parker Foundation, specifically dedicated to educational programs for women in vulnerable situations. He set up a permanent fund to ensure that Dignity Boutique stores would continue operating under the same principles. He expanded the university scholarship programs to include students from other Latin American countries. "Mr. Richard," said Victoria during a foundation meeting, "Mrs. Emily would be so proud to see how you're expanding your work." "It's our way of keeping her alive," Richard replied. "Every person we help is a way of saying she didn't leave in vain." 2 years after Emily's passing, Richard received news that moved him deeply. The UN had decided to include Emily and Richard's story in the global human rights education program. "This means your story will be told in schools around the world," explained the UN representative during his visit. "Millions of children will learn about human dignity through your example." Richard was silent for a long moment. "Emily always said she wanted our story to inspire people we'd never meet. I think she achieved even more than she dreamed." That year at 88, Richard made one last important decision. He decided it was time to join his beloved Emily. He gathered all the important people in his life: Victoria, Sarah, Dr. Michael, Jennifer, dozens of former scholarship recipients and project beneficiaries, for one last meeting. "My dear friends," he said, still lucid, but visibly frail, "the time has come for me to say goodbye. Not because I'm sick, but because I've lived everything I came to live. Emily is waiting for me, and I don't want to keep her waiting any longer." "Mr. Richard, you still have so much to give," protested Sarah. "I've already given everything I had to give," Richard replied serenely. "Now it's your turn to carry on. The chain of kindness is in your hands." "How will we go on without your guidance?" asked Victoria. "You don't need my guidance. You just need to remember the principles we learned together. Always choose love, treat everyone with dignity, use our resources to lift others up, forgive instead of holding grudges, and never lose faith in humanity's capacity for change. And if we have doubts, ask yourselves, what would Emily and Richard do?" He smiled. "But most importantly, ask, what does my loving heart tell me to do?" Because in the end, that's what has always guided us. Richard spent his last months personally distributing the remaining resources among all the projects they had created, ensuring everything would continue running indefinitely. He wrote final letters to every important person in his journey and recorded one last video with his reflections on life. "If anyone asks what the secret to our happiness was," he said in the video, "tell them it was simple. We loved each other unconditionally and used that love as a foundation to love others. There's no more powerful formula for a meaningful life. And if they ask how we turned pain into purpose, tell them it was through choice. In every difficult moment, we chose to grow instead of shrink, to forgive instead of seek revenge, to serve instead of be served." On a quiet autumn afternoon, exactly 3 years after Emily's passing, Richard Parker joined his beloved wife, passing peacefully in his sleep with a serene smile on his face. Richard's funeral was even larger than Emily's. Representatives from various countries were present, witnessing the global impact of their lives. "Today, we do not bury Richard Parker," said the mayor of New York City. "Today, we celebrate the life of a man who proved that true wealth lies in the good we do for others." "Emily and Richard didn't just live a great love story," added Victoria, now internationally recognized as an expert in personal transformation. "They created a model for how that love can be used to change the world." Dr. Michael, now coordinating international humanitarian programs, made sure to emphasize, "They proved that ordinary people can create extraordinary change through simple but courageous choices of kindness and compassion." The boutique where it all began was officially declared a cultural heritage site, visited by thousands of people each year who came to learn about human dignity and social transformation. A plaque at the entrance perfectly summarized their story. "Here began a journey that proved love always wins when we have the courage to live it." Emily and Richard Parker, 1940-2025 and 1938-2025, lives dedicated to the service of humanity. 10 years after their passing, Emily and Richard's story continued to spread across the world. There were human dignity centers in 15 countries, educational programs based on their philosophy in hundreds of schools, and an international network of people dedicated to upholding their principles. Victoria, now 70, had become one of the leading global voices on social transformation through individual kindness. "Emily and Richard taught us that we don't need to wait for the world to change," she said in her talks. "We can be the change we wish to see." Sarah had expanded the Dignity Boutique network to 20 countries, each store serving as a center for education, on respect and social inclusion. They proved businesses can be both profitable and humane, she explained to entrepreneurs interested in the model. Dr. Michael now coordinated a global program for compassionate healthcare in 50 countries. Medicine can't just treat diseases. He taught new doctors. It must treat people with dignity and compassion. Even Jennifer had become a respected speaker on redemption and second chances. "If I could change," she told moved audiences, "anyone can change. It's never too late to choose to be better." The navy blue tie Emily had bought 25 years earlier remained on display in the museum, now accompanied by a plaque that read, "This simple object represents the transformative power of love. Every act of kindness, no matter how small it may seem, can create endless waves of transformation." Thousands of visitors left messages inspired by the story. One of them, from a young student, perfectly captured the lasting impact of Emily and Richard. "I learned that being rich doesn't mean having a lot of money, but having a lot of love to give. And that being successful doesn't mean beating others, but helping them succeed too." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your heartfelt words in the comments. Do you believe Emily and Richard made the right choices? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like the video, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories.